Hello, welcome to my office. Madam President and Madam Vice President and my friends at the Society, thank you so much for this truly great honor. And to put this medal in perspective, the last time I received a scientific award was in the 6th grade. So at the rate of one award every 50 years, this is obviously the last one I'm going to get. So I'll try to make this entertaining for you if I can by stopping my video and sharing my screen. Let's hope this works. Really all the credit for my career is due to 4 people. My parents, Francis and Andy Zolensky, and Sandra and Jean, whom many of you know very, very well. You know, without the support of our families, where would we be? And I must say that I decided to be a field geologist at the age of 8. And so in pursuit of that, I went to a very, very small school in New Mexico for college, New Mexico Tech. And my mentor there was director of the Bureau of Mines, Frank Kalowski, who did everything he could to turn me into a field geologist. And I guess that worked, although I never realized my field would end up being mostly not on the Earth. So it's really luck that got me a job with Frank, and we remained good friends until his early demise, years later. And I have to also add that although this was a very small school, I don't know if this is good luck or bad luck, but I've been forever crossing paths with another New Mexico Tech student. We were there at the same time. We even shared the same advisor for a while, and it's Scott Stanford. That's pretty scary, isn't it? But our paths have been crossing ever since. So I went to grad school at Penn State University, working with Dean K. Smith on, of all things, a project related to nuclear waste disposal. Dean was a mineralogist and really loved to go out and collect minerals like I did. And he was an expert at X-ray crystallography and microparticle techniques. And little I know, but my career really started there. And I was being well trained for what I ended up doing in planetary science, although I didn't know it at the time. One of the things that Dean did was lead us on many field trips to collect minerals. And one of these was to this place, the Cornwall Iron Mine in Pennsylvania, which when it closed about 1980, was the longest continuously operated mine in the Western Hemisphere, 240 years. It was flooded by a hurricane, and it was shutting down, so we had a collecting trip there to collect minerals, mostly iron minerals, as you imagine. One of the strange things I found there was this fibrous mineral sitting amongst a bunch of calcite. And I x-rayed it back in the lab and turned out to be this really rare mineral called tashelanite. So another coincidence, who would have suspected that this iron mine in Pennsylvania would turn out to be a terrestrial analog for CM chondrites? You know, who would have known? Another lesson in grad school is make good friends with your office mates because you might be seeing them throughout your entire career. Among my Penn State office mates and building mates were these guys, Craig Bethke and Bill Bursar. Craig was even at that time writing the first version of the EQ36 program, which became a big part of my early career. And Bill Bursar was, and still is, aqueous geochemist, and working with him in early part of my career was also very important for me. And another office mate was this guy here, Bob Bodner. And at the time, even then he was becoming one of the world's authorities on food inclusion and research. And my first paper, in fact, was with Bob in 1981. It was on food inclusions in terrestrial samples. And now 40 years later, we're still collaborating on food inclusions in extraterrestrial samples. So at the end of grad school, I moved to do a postdoc, NRC postdoc at NASA JSC. And so did Bill Bursar, both came at the same time. Bill worked with Everett Gibson. I worked with this guy here, Dave McKay. And I came there to work on cosmic dust. And of course, I knew nothing about cosmic dust. So fortunately, though, Dave was giving me full access to the E-beam labs, and other young scientists who were there at JSC at the time were the ones who were really mentoring me in planetary science. This guy here, Franz Riedmeier and Ian McKinnon, or Mac, really trained me on the science of cosmic dust and meteorites. In particular, Ian McKinnon, or Mac, he was a real mentor for me, and spent a lot of time making sure I knew how to use the TM without destroying the lab. And when I was, so I came to JSC with no knowledge at all about planetary science, meteorites, cosmic dust, anything like that. So I was reading back papers on meteorites. I noticed this paper on this strange phase called PCP that had been found in CM carbonaceous chondrites by Dave Barber, who was a good friend of Mac's. And it was Mac who suggested, when I realized that this paper was really about the mineral tasheelinite, another big coincidence, Mac is the one who suggested, let's write a paper about this. And that became really my entree into carbonaceous chondrites. And I really owe Mac a big debt of gratitude for that. But that's an amazing coincidence. This tiny, basically really rare phase I found in grad school in a field trip turned to be, the entry point to my entire career, really. And more good fortune, Dave McKay was really good friends with Hiroshi Takeda, who's sort of the godfather of Japanese planetary science. And two of his students were at JSC at the time as postdocs, same time I was there as a postdoc, Masa Miyamoto and Akira Tsuchiyama. And it's really through friendships and early work with these three guys that all the work I've done in Japan with Japanese scientists, a major part of my career came about. And it's really all due to Dave McKay and Hiroshi Takeda. So my postdoc was drawing to a close, and more good luck. Two curation scientists transferred to other jobs and other federal agencies at the same time. And there was a big gap in the curation operation, which needed to be filled, kind of immediately. Doug Blanchard and Mike Toot took a big chance and hired me as a scientist for JSC. I'm sure largely due to recommendation from Dave McKay. I didn't think Dave McKay had paid much attention to me while I was there, but his reputation really got me the jobs I've had ever since. And I'm very extremely grateful to Dave for that. The JSC Curation branch has been a wonderful place to work. And it's really for too many reasons to adequately describe here. But one big reason is the amazing support we get from very special scientists working in the curation labs. As you know, not everyone can do that work. Especially these guys here, Jack Warren and Ron Bastion, who know where all the bodies are buried. Jack's since retired. And when Ron retires, I imagine I'll get out of here also. So at my first LPSC, I met this guy on the right here, Don Brownlee, who's really a science hero. Where would we be without him? We wouldn't have the Cosmic Dust Program, wouldn't have had the Stardust mission, which led to the Hayabusa missions, really. So thanks to Fred Hertz, I was invited on the Long Duration Exposure Facility science team. That's LDEF. And I would have talked about LDEF at MetSoc if there'd been a MetSoc this year. I read a paper about this. This is a really great mission to do many things in Earth orbit. But one of the things it did was to collect micrometeorites. And this mission was run by Bill Kynard. And this satellite was in many ways a precursor to the Stardust mission. Fred Hertz, Don Brownlee, Bob Walker all took full advantage of the science return from LDEF. And the LDEF preliminary examination team, the examination was really the link between the Apollo examinations and all of those from all the recent sample returns. So it was really the link between, the old sample return missions to the moon and all the modern ones that we're benefiting from right now. And LDEF is shown on the bottom here. I'll say more about LDEF in a paper, I think. But LDEF led directly more or less to the Stardust mission. And the preliminary examination we did on LDEF, all those techniques came in really very handy, 6 years later for Stardust. So Stardust was really dreamed up by these guys, Don Brownlee, Peter So, and Ben Clark. I don't think they were, anyway, it was really their mission. They formulated it. And I was invited to join it, and I'm very lucky that I was. This mission represented many engineering and scientific firsts, and you consider all the things it did for the first time, and everything basically worked. It's really an amazing achievement by the engineers and the scientists on this mission. And I won't say more about that, but I will say that next came the Hayabusa and the Hayabusa 2 missions. And now we're in the golden age of sample return missions. And you can see here how big the science teams have gotten. For Stardust, the science team was about 8 people. And for Hayabusa, it's really larger. And for Hayabusa 2, it's quite a large mission. They've grown since then. So more and more scientists are getting on board these fundamentally important missions. Hayabusa and Hayabusa 2 missions have really flown by. And again, you can see how much the science teams have grown during that time. Another important part of my life has been, some field work on the Earth. And mostly it's been meteorite collecting expeditions around the Earth. Twice to Antarctica, thanks to Bill Cassidy and Ralph Harvey. These are team members for those missions. And I will say something about one of them. Sasha Kroot is sort of in the middle on the bottom image here. And I'll say that Sasha Kroot probably started more tent fires and drove a ski-doo into more crevasses than even I did. He's probably the only person who did that more than I did. I've also been very fortunate to be with friends in other desert hot environments to collect meteorites. On top left here, you see me with Peter Yakesh and Arch Reed sleeping on top of the Hoba Iron. I went to Namibia with Matt Genn, Sherry Russell, Phil Bland a few years later again. To Chile with Edmundo Martinez, again with John Scott, who most of you know, collecting meteorites in 1990 in southeast New Mexico and northwestern Texas. So all these desert meteorites, which are so important to us now, came about very gradually. Learned about these. And down lower right, you see Trevor Ireland, Paul Abel, and Scott Sanford were walking around looking for meteorites in Australia. That's the only place where we didn't find any. So I'll just close by saying that these collaborations have been extremely important to my career, as they are for all of us. It's really been a fun career. Hope it's not over yet, but I will say that as you look for the future, really in the golden age of sample return missions right now. So if you're not on board with these missions now, you should try to hop on board. But we're looking forward to a great future in meteorite, cosmic dust, asteroid, and comet research. Thank you so much. And I'll stop sharing here if I can do that. And I'll end the meeting. Thank you so much again for this great honor. I look forward to seeing you someday very soon.